Hello and welcome back. My name is Jack B. And as always, thank you for viewing my video. Trump is a very hyperactive fellow. He is always doing something newsworthy. There are several important issues that are currently highly publicized in the news, such as the open borders, cost of living, health coverage and cost, tariffs and drugs. The borders are now closed, which is great. The other issues, such as the cost of living, health coverage, and cost, tariffs, and drugs, are still floating in limbo. We need more solutions and less talk. And let's not forget about the blowing up of Venezuelan boats. Blowing up the boats is not necessarily making a significant impact on drug traffic to the U.S. It is disrupting the flow of cocaine from Venezuela, but Venezuela is just a transit hub for ocean routes to supply Africa with drugs. Fentanyl is coming from Mexico. Cocaine coming to North America by ocean is coming out of Ecuador, the Pacific Ocean transit hub. As a note, my research indicates the cartels forced the local people in the coastal fishing villages of both Venezuela and Ecuador to pilot the drug boats. What is not in the news is a serious issue that could collapse American society, and evidently there are no actions underway to mitigate the issue. This issue is not mentioned by any politicians or news media, and therefore is not in the forefront of the American public. It is probably the single most important and susceptible section of our infrastructure to life in America. It is the power grid. Some people may not believe this is an issue, and therein lays the problem. Every aspect of American life, water, fuel, communication, health, security, finance, and business rely on power. The existing power grid infrastructure is just barely able to handle the current load. In addition, it is an aging infrastructure prone to age-related failures to components and equipment. In its current condition, any failure at a critical location can cause a cascading effect, putting millions of people at risk for a loss of power for an indeterminate length of time. Two examples of such failures are the 2003 Northeast blackout and the 2021 Texas freeze. In addition to inadequate capacity and age, there are other major concerns with the safety and reliability of the power grid. Number one is the security of the grid, and number two is the increased cost of power to residential consumers due to corporations building more and more data centers. These data centers will provide more of a service to businesses and the government rather than to the average resident. The increased cost of providing the power required for data centers ought to be incurred by the companies owning and using the data centers, not residential customers. The security aspect of the power grid is nebulous. First, the physical infrastructure is wide open and susceptible to sabotage. Plus, we receive products from many foreign countries to support and maintain our power grid. Some of these countries have openly declared the U.S. an enemy. The products imported fall into two basic categories. The first product category is raw energy and fuel. Canada is a major supplier of crude oil, natural gas, and electricity. Mexico is a significant source of oil and increasingly electricity. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and others provide crude oil. Australia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Russia are key sources for uranium. The second product category is components and renewables. China is a major supplier of technology, especially software, programming code, and hardware. They also supply green energy infrastructure such as solar inverters. Mexico is a growing source for electricity and wind components. India and Spain are important suppliers for onshore wind energy parts. Germany and Vietnam are other significant sources for general power grid imports. It is beyond my comprehension as to why we rely on countries that are at best a combative competitor for providing sensitive software, code, firmware, and hardware products for the single most important element of our lives. Especially countries that have vowed to destroy America's way of life. One of those countries to which I am referring is China. Also, Russia should be removed from our list of suppliers providing uranium to the U.S. Relying on critical components from China, such as large power transformers, solar panel inverters, supervisory and remote control software, code, and other electronics, poses immense security risks. The potential for malware and embedded software vulnerabilities, forced labor links, and supply chain dependence is almost assured. Using Chinese product requires U.S. officials to actively investigate threats from Chinese-made smart devices and grid-connected appliances. China and Russia work hand in hand as allies. In addition, Russia has demonstrated the capability to penetrate U.S. grid systems and is a primary adversary for espionage and cyber attacks, notes The Conversation and Senate RPC.gov. The U.S. does not check all code from China, but there are agencies that are actively trying to identify risks from Chinese-linked technology. But they can't check it all. They test software, code, and hardware. They establish supply chain rules, ICTS, and raise awareness. But challenges remain in protecting and securing the vast fragmented grid against threats. The Department of Energy, DOE, tests grid components, chips and software for Chinese origins and vulnerabilities. The Commerce Department has rules for information and communications technology and services, ICTS, supply chains to block risky foreign tech, but implementation is complex. The FBI and intelligence agencies highlight threats like the Volt Typhoon campaign, showing deep-seated access by Chinese actors in critical sectors, including energy. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, provides guidance, but compliance isn't always mandatory for all grid operators. The U.S. power grid is split into three major, largely isolated sections: Eastern, Western, ERCOT, making unified security difficult. Research shows the reality is most energy software contains Russian and Chinese-developed code, often with many vulnerabilities. In addition, a huge amount of energy grid software contains open-source code with potential foreign, Chinese, and Russian contributions, making it hard and costly to fully secure. Another area of concern is the potential for physical attacks on grid infrastructure, such as coordinated sabotage in the destruction of generation stations, transformers, and switching stations. Physical damage from field attacks would be high. Another attack, not on the ground in the field, would be an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. Detonation would be a catastrophe. An EMP can devastate the U.S. power grid by inducing massive voltage spikes. This would burn up sensitive electronics, transformers, and generators, leading to widespread long-term blackouts lasting months or years. Necessities such as safety, food, water, finance, communication, medical-related concerns, and fuel for vehicles would be devastated. It is likely this could cause societal collapse with potential mass casualties due to lack of essential services. Both natural solar storms, GMD, and man-made high-altitude nuclear detonations, EMP, pose this threat. The power grid's aging components make it highly vulnerable. I am not convinced the government is making positive efforts to improve and protect our power grid. If they are, they should reveal their activities. And the news media should cover it often, driving the government to correct issues. I'm not sure the government is even comprehending the potential likelihood of a loss of power or the magnitude of suffering and death possible as a result. At this point, I should mention we all ought to have a plan in place to be able to cope with a sustained loss of power. The plan should address fuel for vehicles, meeting locations, alternate communication methods, medical-related items, food, water, sanitary methods, safety, and security, as well as stashed cash. By the way, this is just an awareness video meant to help people and not to cause mass panic. Well, these are my thoughts for today. And again, whether you agree or disagree, please verify the information presented. Thank you. And until next time, take care and be safe. Ooh.